It is a brand new week, a brand new edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. Joined by David Glenn, my co-host every other week here from the North Carolina Sports Network. It's the Sports Buffet, and we got a lot to get into. I know that for a certain segment of folks out there, this is the one you've been waiting on because you've been seeing me torch Duke fans for the past 2 days on social media. We'll actually address what happened with Duke over the weekend and why they did not complete the task of actually winning the national championship. Shout out to the Florida Gators who won last night, coming from behind again, third or fourth time in a row. They've done that in the tournament to defeat Houston 65-63, third national championship. DJ, I didn't realize the University of Florida is the only university that has won 3 titles in football and basketball in college sports. So shout out to the Florida Gators and a shout out to Kelvin Sampson, North Carolina native, and the Houston Cougars who, again, I can't think of another college basketball program that's been so elite level in terms of talent and just have not been able to grab a national title. So we'll talk about all of that. Alex Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky's NHL most goals scored record over the weekend. We'll talk about what is the most unbreakable record in all of sports. And you can actually participate in this, whether you're watching this on Facebook Watch, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere, YouTube, the YouTube channel at Tobacco Road Sports Radio. If you have one that you think might be the most unbreakable record in sports, put it in the comment section. We'll comment on it from below while we're here live here on your lunch break. Everybody break out your Lunchables. It's time for the Desmond Johnson Show.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the slaughter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome into a brand new edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. We got a loaded slate for Tobacco Road later this evening. If you want some live action going on, East Forsyth taking on Davie in Central Piedmont Conference baseball action. East Forsyth is red hot. They've scored 40 runs in their past 3 games, taking on Davie County. That game is set to start at 7 o'clock. Myself and Chad Delp will be on the call live there on our main player. Chase Williams will be out in East Greensboro taking A&T. They are facing, who is A&T facing today? I'm sorry. A&T is taking on Davidson live, 6 o'clock first pitch out there with Chase Williams live from War Memorial Stadium in East Greensboro. So you can hear that on our Mixler player at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. David Glenn in the house with his co-host every other week here on the Desmond Johnson Show from North Carolina Sports Network. Do I got you? DG, can you hear me?
You just froze up on me, but now I'm back with you. Go ahead.
Sorry. How you doing?
Good to be with you again, man. Happy end of March Madness, and there's a lot to dissect on that topic and the others you mentioned in your start today.
Let's just get to it. Duke falling short to Houston on Saturday night in the Final Four, and bless her heart, my beautiful wife Jennifer. We were out on our anniversary weekend. We actually stayed at the Proximity Hotel in Greensboro. Shout out to that. We just went, right up the road and just got away from the kids for a couple of days. And I just I wasn't even thinking about it really most of the day. And I was like, the Final Four is on tonight. And she did a bracket on ESPN thing. So she was like, oh, let's see what's going on. So we actually turned it on, and I watched the final half of the second half of Houston Duke. And DG, I'll pose this initial question to you. Can you think of another Duke squad that's had the type of collapse that they had in that game? Because this Duke team, we all kind of believed, including myself, that this was probably one of the more complete Duke rosters in quite some time, maybe since 99 or 2001. And they didn't score a field goal for like the last 10 minutes of the game. And I see Duke fans blaming the phantom foul call on Cooper Flag and all that kind of stuff there. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't score for like 10 minutes. And you let Houston kind of just etch themselves back into this game. Can you recall a situation where Duke was been in this situation before in the past?
Well, I'll put it this way. And, for every bad call that went against Duke, including the Cooper flag call, which was a bad one, there was one the refs missed where the ball went out of bounds after off of Con Knippel's foot. They sent the possession the other way. So you could play that game forever. Here's the bottom line. Coaches who coach for a long time, Des, have two things that haunt them. One is when the team that knocks you out of the NCAA tournament, you're better than they are. I don't think that applies here because this year's Duke team, while brilliant, was in a Final Four where all 4 number 1 seeds were there. All 4 of those head coaches knew that any one of the other 3 teams was capable of beating their team. But the other situation that haunts coaches is when you have a game in your grasp, as the Blue Devils did, up 14 with 8 minutes to go against Houston, up 9 with 2 minutes to go against Houston, up 6 with 30-plus seconds to go against Houston, and then it gets away. John Shire, when he's writing his memoirs someday, is going to look back at this one as the one that got away, as fishermen like to say. And the bottom line, I think, is not that, Cooper Flag had a bad game or Con Knippel had a bad game. I thought they were both brilliant, and they're freshmen, right? So anyone who wants to blame youth, I think that's a little misguided because the 2 best players from Duke were their 2 freshmen, Cooper Flag and Con Knippel. But Tyrese Proctor is your shooting guard, and he missed all 4 of his 3-pointers. Sion James is your point guard and had 0 assists. And Kaman Malawach is your NBA lottery pick center, and he had 0 rebounds.
I cannot figure that out. He's got 7'8" wingspan and 0 rebounds for the entire game.
Just like the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a team to win a national championship. And I would say Flag, Knippel, and Malik Brown off the bench gave John Shire what he was expecting from them. That means 7 other Duke players did not. And when you're in big roles, like a Malawach, like a Sion James, like a Proctor, they're the other 3 starters, and you really don't do what you did most of the season, and you fall short against a high-caliber, gritty, tough, well-coached team like Houston, you risk being sent home. And it was a collapse. It's going to haunt Duke, and obviously, those key guys are off to the NBA. Credit Houston for sure, because a lesser opponent would not have cashed in on Duke's, failures toward the end. But it's going to haunt Duke. There's no doubt about that.
And it's crazy too, because the way Houston won on Saturday against Duke was kind of the way they lost against Florida on Monday night, in terms of they had like 5 turnovers at that stretch here in the end of the second half, where Florida down again climbed their way back into the game and won. And they did a good job, suppressing the Stars for Florida for the most part of the game. But again, shout out to the Florida Gators, who, again, the 4-1 seeds in this tournament were the 4 best teams in the country all year, pretty much. Yeah. Auburn, Florida, Houston, Duke, and whatever order you wanted to have them in, depending on what part of the calendar you were looking at. I see Duke fans online trying to, well, for starters, they're like UNC, and I'm like, for starters, Carolina played in 2 weeks. We ain't got nothing to do with what happened to Duke on Saturday night. That's all Duke. So just own all that. These are the same folks I'm hearing about how Carolina choked in 2022 in the national championship game against Kansas with a 16-point lead at halftime. I'm like, they did give up that lead. The difference here is we had no lottery picks in our starting lineup, and we were playing with 5.5 kids because Baycott was playing on a bum ankle the whole second half. Duke was running with 10, 11 dudes. You got lottery picks in here. You've got kids that are going to go in the first round. Isaiah Evans hardly played, and they're saying he's mocked at like 24 in the draft if he decides to go pro in the first round. This is a kid that was averaging like 3 or 5 minutes a game. So, you were loaded with talent, and honestly, you had the game. You had the game in control. You were up double digits with 2 minutes left to go in this game, and it wasn't just one thing. It was a series of things where, again, like you said, I can't blame the youth, because the youth were the best part of the Duke team. If you take away Flag's last attempt, which would have cemented him in Duke and college basketball lore if he had hit that shot, the fact that he didn't, it erases the fact that he had like a 28-point game and, multiple assists and rebound. He's doing everything Cooper Flag normally does. So it wasn't like at this point of the year where we were like shocked that he dropped 28 points in the Final Four. We're kind of expecting it a little bit. And it's the way he does it. It's like nothing is stressed. Nothing is like forced. The only thing that actually felt forced was that last shot, was that it was drawn up for him. He wasn't going anyplace else with it. Everybody in the arena knew where it was going. I knew watching from my hotel room where it was going to end up going. And he had a good look. He just missed the shot. So, I mean, that just kind of happens in college basketball. And now Duke, again, kind of squanders an opportunity to add another banner with a team as loaded as this. And I kept saying all year, they remind me of 1999. They remind me of the 99 team a little bit, where they were real top heavy. They cruised through the ACC. Weren't they like 17-1 or something like that, or whatever it was, 15-1, 19-1. Yeah. So they cruised through the ACC that year, won the ACC tournament.
You mean 99?
Yeah, 99. Yeah, it was before the expansion.
16-0. Yeah,
16-0. Yeah, so they went undefeated in ACC play. That team, if I'm not mistaken, was that a freshman Jason Williams or Jay Williams and.
He wasn't there yet. That was Trajan Langdon, Will Avery, Elton Brand.
That squad, yeah.
Shane Battier.
They were good. They were really good, and just got to the end with UConn, and UConn just played a better game. And it felt like this Duke team was getting set up the same way, where it was like everyone's building them up. And I even jumped on the train myself. I was like, all it's going to take is one team to come around that's not scared and that will play them. And Houston is playing 25-year-old grown men that just lift weights and play basketball pretty much. So.
When Cooper Flagg was trying to make history on that last play, he was dealing with Juwan Roberts, fifth-year senior, all 5 years learning Kelvin Sampson's defense, 6'8", 235 pounds, not only first-team all Big 12, but also all defense in that league. And when Flagg went baseline, he had help, perfectly timed, 6'8", 230-pound Joseph Tugler, who's going to play in the NBA someday, also all Big 12, also all defense in that league. So Flagg is being guarded by two of the best defenders in the entire Big 12 with the game on the line. And you can't tell me that experience doesn't matter. You can't tell me that, Cooper Flagg didn't run into two elite future pros who are roughly his size, and because of that man strength, stronger than he is. Juwan Roberts' hand is so high in the air. Cooper Flagg, that was a high degree of difficulty fadeaway jumper from 12 feet. Yeah. Whereas if Juwan Roberts hadn't gotten that help from Joseph Tugler, it might have been a bank shot off the glass, high percentage.
And
that's little stuff like that matters.
Yeah.
And whereas Houston's executing a defensive possession perfectly with the game on the line, Duke couldn't inbound the ball several times. At the other end, which is really basic basketball when it comes to protecting a lead. A couple times they had to call a timeout. Another time, the lob from Sion James to Flagg was batted down, and Houston ended up with another bucket. And that was part of the furious comeback for the Cougars. But I'll tell you this, anybody who wants to deny that Duke had more NBA talent than anybody in college basketball is delusional.
Yeah.
We have to be real about this. Now, I'll expand the conversation and say, you know what? There were times Dean Smith had more talent than everybody else, and he didn't cash in with a title. He did in 1982, and yet the same coach, I didn't think his 93 team was the most talented in America, but he won the national title. So it's not like a coach is horrible because he has the most NBA talent and doesn't win. Coach K had the best team in 99. He didn't win it that year, but that doesn't make him a bad coach. He had 5 NCAA titles.
Yeah.
So John Shire's at the early edge of his curve. There's plenty of time to digest his body of work, decades down the road. But this was one that got away for Duke, even though we don't know what would have happened against Florida, even if the Blue Devils had gotten past Houston.
And it shows how spoiled Duke and Carolina fans are, because now I'm starting to see folks questioning John Shire. And I'm like, really? Seriously? Seriously? After one game? Now we're doing – I was joking with JP Mundy, him and Ryan Stone. We have a text thread on our phones where we just kind of talk trash about sports all day long. And JP's been on me all year about Hubert Davis, because his brother went to Carolina, so he's freaking out like every other day about Hubert. And I'm like, I'm not worried about Hubert Davis. Sign an extension. He's there for the long haul. Carolina's not going to dump him to go find somebody outside the family. It's not going to happen. But Carolina fans are all like, fire Hubert, fire, after every other game. And now I'm seeing they're turning on Tyrese Proctor, for the game he had. He missed the 2 one-on-ones there towards the end that kind of opened the door for Houston a little bit further. I'm seeing people questioning John Shire. Shire questioned himself in the postgame. He's like, I'm not quite sure what else I could have done differently to stymie what was happening, but
he felt like he let his guys down.
Yeah. And maybe he could have called a timeout here and there and just gave him some reinforcement. But again, this wasn't 5 freshmen out there playing. This was a pretty good mix roster-wise of what he did. And like you said, Duke's going to have a top recruiting class coming in next year with the Boozer twins. Who knows who stays? If he can keep like an Isaiah Evans, if Tyrese Proctor comes back for his senior year, feels like he's been there for 6 years already. But if he comes back for another year, that stabilizes your backcourt. Duke's going to be just fine. So I'm not really worried about them so much. The Duke fans, they'll just have to sleep this off a couple more nights. It's going to sting. It felt the same way when I watched Carolina squander that lead against Kansas. But in that instance, I kind of felt helpless. Like it felt like we were outgunned at a certain point. This game felt like Duke let it slip away, and that might hurt a little bit more going forward. Good note is Cooper Flagg's probably going to be a Charlotte Hornet, so you'll be able to see him next year, hopefully, because they need him desperately. I think Charlotte is the second to last place overall record-wise, I think right now. I haven't checked, but as long as they're in the bottom 3, the odds flatten out in terms of the ping pong balls or whatever, so they don't have to have the worst record in the league, although they feel like at times they are playing with the Greensboro Swarm out there.
You'll need those balls to bounce your way, though.
Yeah, every single time, DG, and you know this probably better than anybody, every single time, except for Larry Johnson, every single time the Hornets have had a chance to get the number 1 pick and a generational talent, they've always gotten the number 2 pick. Like no matter what, whether it was Shaquille O'Neal, whether it was, Anthony Davis, who was here most recently. We got the 3rd pick and got Lonzo Ball, could have got Anthony Edwards, like that kind of thing. It's just every time there's a generational kid sitting there, somehow Charlotte doesn't get him. I'm hoping Cooper Flagg, being at Duke, maybe NBA looks at it and goes, let's make that ping pong ball a little bit colder than the rest of them, or something to that effect. Let's go 8 miles down the street to Chapel Hill real quick before we got to college basketball news that dropped yesterday per ESPN over at the University of North Carolina. Freshman, 5-star incoming freshman, excuse me, my mind.
Ian Jackson.
Hey, thank you. Ian Jackson just decided to not enter the NBA draft, enter the transfer portal. DG, can you explain to Carolina folks what's probably happening here? Because I have a good inclination of what's probably going on in terms of why he decided to hit the portal as opposed to declare for the draft. And can he still actually, even though he's in the portal, can he still try out for the NBA and then come back and do whatever?
Yeah, you can apply for early entry in the NBA draft and still go through the portal process. Lots of guys did that just last year. April 22nd is when the portal closes. That's just to put your name in. And April 26th is the NBA's early entry deadline, just to declare yourself as a candidate. You do reserve the right to yank your name out, which is why a lot of guys both enter or put their names on the early entry list, but also put their names in the portal. With Ian Jackson, he is from New York City. St. John's was a school that he looked at when he was on the recruiting trail. To Hubert Davis's credit, Carolina needed to sign more prep All-Americans. They were famous for that for decades under Dean Smith and Roy Williams, and they hadn't done as much of it lately. So Hubert did sign a year ago Drake Powell and Ian Jackson, both McDonald's All-Americans. But a year later, and this is not unusual, right? This is happening in almost every program. Both his starting point guard, Elliot Cadeau, enters the portal, and now he's at Michigan. Ian Jackson, maybe he ends up at St. John's. Maybe he ends up somewhere else. But what's different in today's world, Des, is, back in the Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski days, of course, they had to wonder which of my guys might turn pro early. That part's not true or not new. But the new part is it's not as simple as does the coach still want the player and does the player still want to stay? Now there's a negotiated number.
Right.
And if somebody knocks your socks off, whether they're tampering with you or not, right, putting your name in the portal signifies that others are now allowed to talk to you without violating NCAA rules. But what all the coaches will tell you is schools use back channels to plant the seed with a player on another. Hey, if you put your name in the portal, we've got some money waiting for you at fill in the blank university.
That's what this feels like. Yeah.
Is that tampering? Yeah. I mean, if you're going through intermediaries, good luck proving that to the NCAA. But we'll see. We don't know for sure right now as you and I speak where Ian Jackson's going to end up. But is it an alarming trend when you have a lot of transfers? Not automatically, because there are just literally thousands of them now at Division I level in men's basketball every year. It's more about who's leaving, why are they leaving, and if you're being outspent by other leagues, as we discussed, the SEC outspent the ACC a year ago on the transfer portal. and the SEC reaped the benefits and the ACC sagged for most of the season. That's not mere coincidence. Why are they leaving? Why are they leaving, and who's leaving? It didn't matter last year when a backup, center left the Tar Heels in the portal. That happens all the time. But when a key player leaves, that's when bigger questions have to be asked. Was it about money? Was it about playing style? Was it about not feeling like you were getting better enough or improving your NBA stock? Hubert Davis and his staff have to ask themselves those questions, because as these Final Four teams showed us, 3 of the 4 had a whole lot of guys who had been in their system for multiple years. And Duke being the exception, they had so many freshmen and so many one-year transfers that they were different. But the other 3 had a lot of guys with multiple years playing for Kelvin Sampson, a lot of guys with multiple years playing for Bruce Pearl at Auburn, and a lot of guys playing for multiple years under Todd Golden at Florida. I think even in the transfer portal era, that's going to be the way to build championship teams for most. And Carolina needs to find its way back toward the top of the mountain.
Do you think that's going to change now that we're kind of cycling out of the 5-year, 6-year COVID players? I guess this is technically the last year for them, but there's still guys that had medical waivers and stuff where I think one of the Houston guys is coming back. He's going to be like a 6-year player. So, do you think this is going to start to change at all? Or
because of my legal background, I've been like an expert on eligibility rules. I've actually had college coaches call me about a player, describe their journey, and ask me if they have another year of eligibility or not. It's so confusing right now, Des. Not only is the COVID year hanging around for just a handful of guys, they made a rule about you if you were in junior college and you were about to expire your eligibility, they're letting you play for one more year. So that's a different wrinkle affecting hundreds of kids. And now, Efton Reed of Wake Forest just played his senior year, but he's appealing to the NCAA for an extra year of eligibility based on the fact that he had to sit out some games at the beginning of his Wake career because he was a second-time transfer and the rules hadn't changed at that point. So he got a small penalty. Well, is that small penalty sitting out a few games enough to give you a new full year of eligibility? Maybe the NCAA is scared of a lawsuit and they just give all these extra years of eligibility out to everybody, or everybody with any argument. But anyway, it's harder to predict than ever. I'll just say this: Duke and Louisville are the only 2 teams right now, as you and I are chatting in mid-April, that I know are going to be contenders next year because of what they have coming in from the high school ranks, because of what they've already gotten in the transfer portal in Louisville's case. I do think Carolina's on the next list of promising teams, but we have so many dominoes still to fall. Carolina signed the 7-footer from Arizona. He was one of the top big men available, right? They have Caleb Wilson, prep All-American, on the way in from the high school ranks. Maybe Seth Trimble stays. Maybe Van Allen Lubin stays. If Drake Powell stays, well, then Carolina's one of the contenders again. They need a point guard from somewhere.
Need a point guard, yeah. I don't know if it'll be Trimble
they need some depth, but it's by the end of April, we'll have a much clearer idea of what next year's ACC basketball looks like. Right now, there's just some of these schools don't even know half their rosters right now.
And that's the crazy thing when you're sitting there. That's why when I see the ESPN way too early to project top 25 for next year, I'm like, how can you even do this? Like, most of these teams only have like 3 or 4 guys they know are coming back completely. So like with Carolina, to your point, I agree. If Powell comes back too, Carolina should have one of the best front courts in the ACC between Powell at the 3. You put the kid from Arizona at center. And then you'll have Van Allen Lubin and Caleb Wilson, the 6'10", 5-star freshman, top 10 player in the country, coming in and playing power forward. They did pick up the kid from, what was it, Pittsburgh, the 6'6" wing,
West Virginia.
And Hubert said they need to get bigger, and they have. They're trying to get longer and bigger. And I would think they're probably going to try to get older too. For the most part, Hubert has done pretty well in the portal. If you look at his hits compared to misses, for every Cade Tyson, there's a Brady Manick or a Jalen Winters, or he's had a few Ingram where he's found the right pieces for what he wants to do. Now he's just going to have to do it on a more consistent basis. And it looks like Shire's decided to go that route too with this past year's team. The success he's had, I would assume he's going to hit the portal hard as well. So Carolina and Duke, they're going to be fine. I'm not worried about Carolina and Duke. Before we leave college basketball, though, shout out to UConn. I was actually going into a restaurant with my wife on Sunday afternoon, and they had TVs up everywhere. And I looked up, and UConn was up by 30 on South Carolina. I was like, what in the world is going on here? UConn winning Geno Auriemma's 12th national title, 12th. The man is 71 years old, wins the title this year. They beat 3 1 seeds on the way there to win. And just looking back at his career and the stars that he has brought in, you could almost say Geno is the godfather of the WNBA, like in terms of the females that have played at his program and have gone on and become pillars of the WNBA. Is Geno the best coach active in sports today? I won't even say professional, just sports.
That's a great question. I mean, I thought Nick Saban of Alabama in football kind of carried that unofficial title in the latter part of his career, just because of his amazing success with the Crimson Tide. It might be Geno right now. I will say this: he dominated women's basketball for a while before a lot of schools started pouring money into women's basketball. And then when it became harder to win titles, he went 8 or 9 years without one before getting one this year and breaking that drought. Now it's, a drought in air quotes, because it's hard to win national championships, and he now has 12 of them. But much like an Anson Dorrance, kind of the godfather of college women's soccer as a coach, before a lot of schools poured money into women's soccer, he was winning the national title almost every year. And then when more schools invested in that sport, it was harder to win, and he didn't win as many. So I'm not taking any shots at Geno Auriemma. I think Dawn Staley of South Carolina is also one of the best coaches in any sport right now.
Yeah.
But he would be among the candidates, because it's just hard to argue with 12 national titles.
I was trying to think of who else is active. Maybe Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr. You can put a thing in there for Steve Kerr. I do think the Warriors are going to be dangerous. We'll have an NBA playoff preview Friday. No show Wednesday, but we'll have a playoff preview Friday. And we'll go through the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference and take our picks or whatnot. But Steve Kerr, maybe. College basketball is kind of going through a drain a little bit in terms of guys have been there. Although a case to be made for Rick Pitino.
Still a heck of a coach. There's no doubt about that.
So that was the first one that came to mind, was Rick Pitino and what he's doing there. And hey, like I said, Ian Jackson, I feel like he's going to end up in St. John's. I feel like they're just going to offer more money than Carolina wants to pay him, and he'll just go back home, play in front of family. It just makes sense. So you got that there. But yeah, Geno, you can make a strong argument. And then you start going through the list of players, DG, that have played for Geno, from Diana Taurasi all the way to Paige Beckers now, who has still good. Well, no, Juju won the player of the year. They already announced it. But Paige is expected to be the number 1 pick in the draft this year. And you said, it'd been 8 or 9 years since they had been there.
But they had been in the Final Four almost every year. They just didn't. They didn't cash in with the title.
Cash it in.
8 or 9 years, but they've never just disappeared. They've always been really, really good, and consistent success at the top level. Is another sign of greatness, right? I mean, some people say, well, Dean Smith had only 2 national titles. Well, he also had 36 straight top 3 finishes in the ACC,
multiple Final Fours,
just a whole bunch of Final Fours and a whole bunch of ACC titles. So, you count championships. That's the starting point for so many of these conversations. But I think consistent success says a lot about any coach, and Geno Auriemma certainly has that at UConn. And given when the WNBA was on the rise, and the timing of his program being just the trendsetter in that sport at the same time the WNBA was on the rise. There were great women's college basketball coaches before Geno, Pat Summitt, et cetera, at Tennessee, but the WNBA wasn't a thing at all for a while. And then it was just in its infancy for a while. So you make a good point about the rise of UConn women's basketball, along with their former players being a huge part of the rise of the WNBA.
Well, not long ago, a couple years ago, where people were saying that UConn was ruining women's college basketball. Remember when they went that stretch where they won like 100 and something games in a row, and like nobody could beat them? They were beating everybody by like 40, like every time they went out. Like, it was crazy. Before I get you out of here, though, something that did happen over the weekend that I did not expect to happen over the weekend, but it did in NHL. Alex Ovechkin from the Washington Capitals surpassing Wayne Gretzky for most goals in history with 895. Between that, LeBron breaking Kareem's record of most points scored in NBA history, 42,000 and counting. Depending on when LeBron decides to retire, he might push that record way out above what anybody else could get to. Maybe start thinking while I had you on so I could rack your brain. What do you think is the most unbreakable record in sports as we sit here today?
I'm glad that we are just alive to see guys like Ovechkin break Gretzky's record or LeBron break Kareem's record. It's just we're fortunate that it's not just reading about dead people in history books who hold these titles. We get to get our own generational versions of these things. But my short answer is maybe an obscure one, Des. But because as a little boy and as a teenager, I was a pretty good baseball pitcher and I was a starting pitcher. I read about this man named Cy Young, which the award for best baseball pitcher is still named after Cy Young. You want to talk about a record that's never going to be broken. Cy Young had 749 complete games. 749 complete games. There are 40-year-old pitchers in Major League Baseball right now who have 30. Cy Young had more than 700. There is no pitcher currently in Major League Baseball with 30 complete games at any age.
Wow.
This was, of course, back in the day. If they handed you the ball, they expected you to finish.
You're going. Yeah, you're going. Don't look at us at the end of the third.
There are guys pitching both ends of a doubleheader and all this crazy stuff. And I mean at the top professional level. Cy Young, he also won 511 games, which is a record that some people think will never be broken because with such relief pitcher specialty and expertise, the starter doesn't get the wins as often because they don't pitch as far into the game as often. So those are two Cy Young records that might never be broken, but you can make a long list of the hardest to break.
This topic's come up, the different variations of this show that I've done over the years, and from the rundown WSGS all the way to this topic has come up in different roundtables and stuff all the time. I always come back to the same one. And every time I do it, I go back and look at the stats and I'm like, is there anyone that can catch this right now active? And I don't see anyone on the list. John Stockton's assist record in the NBA, he finished with 15,806. The next closest to him is Chris Paul at 12,485.
Wow.
You start going down the list to see who's active still. Chris Paul, I think he's retiring after this year. I saw that he was retiring. And I thought I saw a thing where he's joining some Saudi league or something. I don't know if it was like a April Fool's thing or something where he's getting like $1 billion in money or something nuts. But I don't know if that's accurate or not. I do know I thought he'd say that he was going to retire after the season. He's 40 years old, so he's not going to catch it. He's 3,000 behind it. The next active player you get on the list is LeBron James at number 4. He's at 11,570. After that, you got to get all the way to number 8, Russell Westbrook, who hasn't cracked 10,000 yet. And then after him, James Harden's at 13, at 82.74. No one else. Kyle Lowry, I think, is still playing at 71, but he's not going to get anywhere near. He's close to 7,100. And everybody else is retired. So it's like there's no one active in the top 25 other than Chris Paul, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden and Kyle Lowry. Paul and James are in the top 5, but they're at the end of their careers, and they're still 4,000 assists short of John Stockton. I look at it, I'm like, I don't see anybody anytime soon getting anywhere close to this. There's nobody even in the top 25 that's like moving up the ranks or anything. Shout out to LeBron James, because although Michael Jordan is still my GOAT, I think he should be everyone's GOAT. I cannot deny the fact that when LeBron is done, he's going to be in the top 5 in like every major statistical category there is. So, I mean, if that's not an argument for him being close enough to be in the discussion, I don't know what would be. But the John Stockton assist record for me, I was going to say Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, but honestly, I think someone might get close to that in the next, 10 years. The way the NBA is refereed nowadays, it's kind of more freer. You're not banging around as much. The 3 is being used more. I could maybe see somebody go on a heater and get close to it. The closest we saw was Kobe with the 81 over 15 plus years ago. But the Stockton thing was the thing that came up for me in terms of the assist thing. So again, a loaded show today. Shout out to everybody that stopped through to check us out. We will not be on tomorrow. This is the part of the calendar where we start going a couple of days a week, and then eventually we'll go down to a day a week until we get to our summer break, and we'll be back in August full blown. But later on this week on Friday, we will actually start our NBA preview of the playoffs. This is the last week of the regular season. The West is bundled up together. We'll talk about the Hornets and their draft prospects. We'll bring in Matt Alquiza from Sports Illustrated and some others to discuss some of that. Carson Williams from Boom Broadcasting will be here as well. And we'll start our preview to WrestleMania, which is in 2 weeks. It's Easter weekend, so not this weekend, but next weekend. We'll get you ready for that too. So follow DG on Twitter at David Glenn Show. Go and subscribe, rate and subscribe to one of the fastest growing sports networks in North Carolina, the North Carolina Sports Network over on YouTube. They do excellent work over there. DG, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And everybody get off those Lunchables, get back to work. We'll see you guys later on this week.